Welcome back. I would ask all of our participants to please put their video cameras on. Thank you so much. So now it's my sincere pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for the day, Brother Herman Johnson. Herman is a member of the Dominican province of St. Martin de Porres. Brother Herman, AKA St. Martin de Porres, if you noticed, we welcome you back to this conference and are so eager to listen to your presentation. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, am I sure?
You're good.
Okay, I can see myself on here. And hello, everybody. It's good to see everybody. You all are very beautiful. And I'm glad to be here. I see Sister Attractor. I see a few people I know aside from Sister Jenna. And I would, before I start, I would just like to say a little thing. This is the first time I have ever given a talk on racism to anybody. Maybe with the exception in a casual way, I'm friends with Dominican Sisters of Peace, and I've in parties and gatherings, but I've never ever given a talk. So maybe this is an unnecessary defensive statement. This is not a polished academic talk. It's basically my experience as a Black man being raised in New Orleans, a very racialized city. I was born in New Orleans in a very racist environment, and I remain in New Orleans in a very racialized environment. And so I just want to give that little statement. I'll come to you as a brother, talking somewhat casual. I'm not a polished speaker on in this area, but I'm grateful that I was asked to share my experience because I haven't been living in a bubble. Of course, being a Black male and what affects and going through the world as a Black male. Of course, I've experienced my life has been altered, modulated around that. So with that said, may I start off by taxing your listening. The readings for the gospel today for May 28th, May 27th, I would just like to read the first reading in Sirach. It fits beautifully the theme, or it will guide. It will be like the column of my talk. The book of Sirach that's set for today on Thursday, May 27th. So just bear with me as I go through that beautiful reading on the book of Sirach. Now I will recall God's work. What I have seen, I will describe. At God's word were his works brought into being. They do his will as he has ordained for them. As the rising sun is clear to all, so the glory of the Lord fills all his works. Yet even God's holy ones must fail in recounting the wonders of the Lord. Though God has given these, his hosts, the strength to stand firm before his glory, he plumbs the depths and penetrates the hearts. Their innermost being he understands. The Most High possesses all knowledge and sees from of old the things that are to come. He makes known the past and the future and reveals the deepest secrets. No understanding does he lack. No single thing escapes him. Perennial is his almighty wisdom. He is from all eternity one and the same, with nothing added, nothing taken away, no need of a counselor for him. How beautiful are all his works, even to the spark and fleeting vision. The universe lives and abides forever to meet each need. Each creature is preserved. All of them differ from one another, yet none of them has he made in vain. For each in turn, as it comes, is good. Can one ever see enough of their splendor? The word of the Lord. I picked that because it affirms one starting point, as we know in the book of Genesis, that God created all things, and 5 times it said, it was good, it was good, it was good, it was good, it was good. All of creation is good. And as solid and clear as that is, that's one of the many truths that escapes us. And then the gospel today is about Bartimaeus, the blind man, who, when Jesus says, "What do you want me to do for you?" he says, "I want to see." And so one of the themes I want to say for us is that racism is us being blind to the total beauty of creation. Racism is blindness about the dignity and beauty of other people. We have spiritual cataracts in which we're limited in seeing beauty in all of creation. We're limited in seeing beauty in some people. And that gets me into another tone of saying I was born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. I was raised like you with a limited consciousness and focus. I was raised in a Black Catholic ghetto. And the reason why I say that was because New Orleans, I later learned, was one of the few places in the country in our environment. It was a characteristically notable Catholic culture. And I was raised in an all-Black environment, and everybody was Catholic. There were several Catholic schools in walking distance for Black children in my neighborhood. So that was my orientation in a Black Catholic culture. I also very early on, probably before kindergarten, that there was a negativity against dark-skinned people. Where did I learn that from? I learned that from Black people. In talking, I want you to forgive my language if I use generalizations. Sometimes we tend to use generalizations and we don't mean it. But I'm just trying to see where it was from certain experiences that general statements came up. And it was one stereotype I picked up about Black people was when I was growing up, was that being in a racialized reality, one stereotype that could be said about Black people was, I noticed how much we hated each other. Now I'm speaking in the locale of New Orleans. Some Black people would get offended or embarrassed because I say that. But one of the things that I think being in a racialized society, where there was a marked negativity against anything Black, anything, schools, churches, our persona, going deeper into our persona, our lips, our hair, a negativity against anything about us. And that was so much entrenched in the culture that Black people who I was raised with bought into that. Kind of like women who are raised in a sexist environment, sometimes they incorporate and that becomes a norm. They never mentally get out of it. That's an erroneous notion of who they are. So that was the environment that I was raised in. And yesterday we met Martin de Porres. And likewise, Martin de Porres was raised in a racialized environment. When we talk about Martin and other saints, we tend to present them without blemish. You know, artistic renditions show that they just lived a wonderful, holy life, and we want to be just like them. But we don't see the thorns. Like someone, I was asked yesterday by Sean, why did Martin choose to be a brother as over a priest? And the piece was a big important piece was missing. He didn't have any choice. He could not be a priest. They did not associate the holiness of a priest with a dark-skinned man. Uh, a man whose mother was a slave, who was conceived in a loveless sex act. They did not associate him even being a Dominican brother. And so we forget that piece when we're talking about the realness and the reality of racism and how it has been entrenched in our world. And we forget some of the fundamental things that this country, the United States, was founded on racism. It was founded on the subjugation of dark-skinned people to create a country for some people to enjoy and for others to stay in the shadows. We can't forget these painful realities. One of the reasons why I've avoided talking about racism, part of it, I don't think that's been my mission, even though it's my mission to care about it, but not to be a speaker about it, is because I, as a speaker, I've always been uncomfortable talking about it. Why? Because growing up as a Black male, I felt I had no credibility on nothing about race. Who am I to come talk about racism? I saw where a white male might have more credibility than me. That's just a fact. So I kept quiet uh, and never had any desire to talk about it. I just felt that's not my issue. And um, and yet the gospel today, despite me being in that position, the gospel today, I also apply to myself. Um, I didn't grow up bitter about my posture in life. Starting very early, a very narrow focus, I had a lot of Dominican sisters. We had three kinds here. And I naively thought, I didn't know that white people were racist because I had Dominican sisters and they liked us and they just treated us like people. But but gradually I grew up and realized the world was not Dominican women. You know, and I went to Black Catholic schools from kindergarten through graduate school. I went to Xavier University, founded by St. Catherine Drexel. That's a religious order of women that were founded in 1893 to serve the Black community, to share the life of the Eucharist with the Black community. And my experience with them, they did that very well. I had Eucharistic Missionaries of St. Dominic, and I had the St. Mary's Dominicans. And as pastoral ministers, we had what we call the Irish Dominican sisters in our neighborhood, in our parishes. And so that kind of sheltered me from some of the harsh realities of racism. I would say I hid from I saw being in for me in the time that I was born and raised, being in an all Black environment was a protection for me. And I'm reluctant to say that, but we all want to be safe. We all want to be in an environment where we have psychological ease. I was glad I went to a school for Black boys, because if I got a C in class, which I did. I got many C's. I didn't say it was because I was Black. I would say it was because I didn't study. But if I had went to a predominantly white school, it would have fed into my inferiority complex. And if I had gone to a predominantly white school, I would have been labeled a minority. And it may sound like just linguistic, but being raised in an all Black Catholic environment, I was just a person. I didn't have this label, a minority. I was just a person. And as we heard in the book of Sirach, because I did have some protection, I was able to be who God had called me to be. I wasn't distracted with a lot of nonsense of people limiting me and telling me who I could be. I could just discover the wonder of who I am. It's hard enough for any of us to be ourselves and to find out who God is calling us to be without distractions. But I was able to develop my talent. I went to a school for Black boys, and a priest with an Irish accent put a book there. I went to a high school run by the Josephites. The Josephites were another order founded in the late 1900s to work exclusively with African Americans, because that was a part of the vineyard that was underserved. And that's a religious order that's significantly present in New Orleans today. And it was there I fell in love with Spanish. I never thought about it. That's what I liked. I liked Spanish. I went to college and I majored in Spanish. But I'm sad to say, when the reality of racism hit me was when I joined the Dominican order. A little background: when I was 10 years old, my father was a male nurse, and he brought home a pamphlet from the hospital. He noticed they had one of a Black saint, and the pamphlet was of Saint Martin de Porres. And even though I was 10 years old and I didn't understand psycho-spiritual things, I knew I was going to be a Dominican brother. I looked at my daddy in my immaturity and I said, "Daddy, Black people go to heaven?" And he said, "Yes, stupid." But I absolutely knew. I've never been more certain about anything than that. And I didn't have a vocabulary to explain it, but I just knew. So I went to high school and college, and I kept it a little secret. And a nun did ask me on graduation night, "Herman, what you doing after graduation?" I said, "I'm joining the Dominicans." And she looked at me and she said, "Come to think of it, that fits you." So, women know. But I had never spoke about it to anybody. And it was when I left the security of in the safety of a Black Catholic environment, and I left New Orleans and I went to Dubuque, Iowa. I hit the jackpot and had a novice master who had common sense. He just saw me as a person. That's all I wanted, was to be treated as a person. But then when I took vows, things kind of changed for me. The student master, well educated, thought I was strange. I just didn't fit his notion of a Black person. He had a television notion of a Black person. Something, I don't know what, he had some notion I didn't fit. And I wasn't equipped to deal with that. But somehow I felt to be myself, I had to scheme to be myself, which is a crazy, sick way. I was hit to scheme. I'm guilty of having a compliant demeanor. I wasn't going to pretend to be some Black person, though, who he thought I should be. I wasn't some prolific Black preacher. I was just a simple 21-year-old who all I wanted to be was a Dominican brother. And I was used to being treated like a person, and all of a sudden, I was treated like an object. And that's a horrible feeling, an object. And I was blown away at how racist white people could be. I learned that very late. I had been around Dominican sisters all too much in my life that I just never, I had never grasped how racist white people could be. I encountered Dominicans who not only didn't like Black people, they hated Black people. And I'm embarrassed. I'm not here to just give that side of it, but that was a reality I had to face. And therefore, that could have driven why I have always shied away from giving talks or participating in forums on racism. Because honestly speaking, and even today as a grown man, I had feared that I'd get cremated. I'd just be decimated. The nerve of you hinting that I'm a racist. So I've kept my mouth shut. When I give my presentations on Martin de Porres, I talk about the cute little parts. I don't overemphasize what's stressed in this new book about him, that most of his life was tainted with heinous, violent racism by his own friars. You know? And yet what has been my survival in this, and it was Martin de Porres' survival, is going where the grace is. Going where the grace is. Going back to the gospel to see that I'm part of God's beautiful creation. And one of the gifts that I have is I love people. Probably the top thing I love being a Dominican. You talk to the Dominican sisters, I'm at everything they have. I just love being a Dominican. I have a lot of good things going on. So what has been my substance all these years, in my 40 years as a Dominican? The grace of my vocation, my call to be a man of the word. Saying that has not caused me to be oblivious to the racism and to lend my voice to making the situation better. But one of the ways, and this is what I invite each one of you, that I can contribute to a messy problem that we have in the world, is just try to treat people nice, to always pray to remove those spiritual cataracts off your eyes in how you look at people who you traditionally don't interact with. We all are guilty of looking at somebody and saying other or them. One of the ways when I let people understand and try to get people to understand where they're a part of a racialized culture, cultural racism, I use a true example about myself. As I said, having gone to an all-boys school, I picked up tons of sexist from 9th grade on, just a world of sexism about women. And it was unchallenged. It was just part of being in an all-male environment. And one would say, oh, that's just how boys are. But gradually, when I grew up, I had to challenge myself that that was demeaning and totally defying of women, and totally disrespectful of women. Certain attitudes we have, innocent attitudes. We were good people, but we had cultural sexism that needed to be challenged. I needed to be challenged. Well, likewise, you, perhaps many of you on here, may have cultural racism within you. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. That doesn't mean I'm in a position of pointing a finger at you. It just means that you're a part of this broken world that has transmitted skewed information about the dignity and beauty of people who you traditionally have not had significant interaction with. That's all that means. And I just don't be afraid to own that in yourself. Just like I have to own my own brokenness. In the gospel for today, I too ask the Lord, I want to see more clearly. I want to see that beautiful creation that's mentioned about in Sirach, in the book of Sirach. All that God has made is marvelous. I want to see clearly. And that's the only way we can be authentic healers of racial justice and promoters of racial justice is by acknowledging the dignity and beauty of other people, getting to know them, allowing them to reveal who they are, because chances are they're not who you think they are. You know, I'm not who you think I am. You know, I used to deal with it a lot of times with humor when the student master thought I wasn't a Black person. And he said he thought, I mean, I'm not, some people don't, they think they know who I am. And I just say, I don't know how in the world you know who I am, because sometimes I don't know who I am. You know, it's always being revealed. God is always revealing God's self to us and showing us more of our dignity and beauty. And no culture is static. No culture is static. I meet Native Americans, Mexican Americans. I meet different religious women, and they're all unique. They all have their unique dignity and beauty. I can have a tendency to say white men, and not all white men are the same, by no means, I know that. They're not all the same. And so living in a racialized world, sometimes we just feel, I can feel like I'm just an object, because we all have a hunger to want to be known for who we are. Even Jesus in the gospel asked, who do you say that I am? Nobody want to be known for what they're not. They want to be known for who they are, as they really are. I'm Brother Herman, and I like Spanish. I'm not teaching African American studies. I like Spanish. And I like Spanish speaking people, and I like oysters. You know, I'm a human being. And these simple examples is sometimes people don't get to know, and that it's hurtful when people don't know me for who I am. It's just, that's what the pain is at. I'm just an object. You know, I'm an object. Some people want me to be, in quotes, like another Black person they know who's a hot, polished ticket. Well, that's that person. I'm not that person. You know, I can't talk about whatever. I could talk about theology and Spanish linguistics, but I can't do that. And yet racism is a topic that I live with 24 hours a day. Some of the practical experiences, my experiences of racism every day that I'm unconscious of, you know, I go to a daily mass downtown, a Vincentian church. The reason why I go, because if I go to mass and I'm a t-shirt and khaki pants guy. In New Orleans, when I go to daily mass, the women think I'm gonna steal their purse. So I'm uncomfortable. And they get very uncomfortable with my presence in church. So I go to a Vincentian church where a lot of homeless people under the bridge, there's a lot of homeless people around the place. And I just feel comfortable in there. You know, there are a bunch of Daughters of Charity there. And I just feel comfortable there because I don't feel anybody is scared of me. 2 weeks ago, I went to one of the brothers said, Herman, go to this store and you can get there's sales on frames of eyeglasses. So I said, I'll go, and I went. And the man got up and pretended he was washing the demo of the glasses. He just knew I was there stealing. So I just walked out. and I'm not the type to make noise, to go on Facebook and tell people to boycott the place. It happens all the time. I have tons of stories with Katrina when I was in the water helping lift people up. The white people were scared when I was holding their grandmother, but she had to get in a boat, and I was strong. And then when they found out that, oh, that's one of those brothers, they relaxed. They didn't want me to touch their grandmother. And I have a fear as a Black male in New Orleans that I might get killed doing good, because nobody associate goodness with us, with people who look like me. And I hate when some of the other brothers say, well, if you wear your habit more, you wouldn't be in trouble all the time. And I don't like that. I don't like using the habit that way. I like, in my formation too, I wasn't raised wearing the habit like the younger generation. So, but I hate when they say that. If you had your habit on, they wouldn't have stopped you. Well, I don't like that. So that's how I experience it in the real, every day. So subconsciously, my movements are around the fact that I live 2021 in New Orleans, that still is a very racist, chilly place for a Black man, even though there are a lot of us. And everything I do, where I go to daily mass, there's a church next door to me, but I get in the car and go downtown under the bridge, right downtown. I go to daily mass away from my house. The church I go to Sunday is a Josephite parish. It's some Sisters of Peace. And it's not because I like gospel music. I take any kind of liturgy. I even like Gregorian chant, believe it or not. But I go there because I'm relaxed. I can't go to church where people are just nervous around me. And just everything I do. But I'm not bitter. In fact, I'm very happy. And not a Pollyannish happiness. I think as a male religious, I chew on the word of God like I do today. And I ask, and one of the things, somebody who has experienced vicious racism in New Orleans, one of the things is I need the gospel just as much as I'm telling you, you need the gospel. I need the word that was said today about the blind man wanting to see. I need to keep my eyes healthy, that I don't turn bitter against people. I just don't turn bitter. I could, because I'm a human being. If I may confess some of my sins, when one of the brothers died, I said, oh, that's one less Chicago white racist in the province. I'm guilty of saying that. It's one less Chicago white racist. We've had a brother who the bishop fired because the sisters of the diocese turned him in. He had been in the diocese in a position of leadership for 20 years. And when the new bishop came, he just kept quiet for a year. And collectively, the religious women of the diocese said, this Dominican not only dislikes Black people, he hates them. And they gave details when it was time for distributing money for after Katrina. He made sure that the Black parishes and communities didn't get it, and felt he had company in voicing that he didn't want those old ugly Black people to get the money, So it would be easy for me to give a nice little polished talk, and people who know me would be surprised hearing me say these things, because how I'm known among my brothers is I'm Brother Herman, the nice one who's always smiling, and I am happy, And Brother Herman likes Martin de Porres. He's so nice. And all that superficial stuff. Brother Herman, he has 3 master's degrees and a doctorate from Columbia, and to me, all that's bull. Because even though I went to Columbia, I didn't feel this Ivy League thing. I went only because I like Spanish, but I didn't feel I was a part of the club, And in fact, if you read an article that I sent to America in August 2023, August 20, excuse me, last August, editor, I was just gabbing like I'm doing now on an article that was written in America magazine. And I did something for the first time I had never done in my life. I wrote the editor congratulating him on the article. And he asked me, could he use it? And I told him about when I went to New York to do a doctorate. And I took 6 months naively thinking, oh, I'm a Dominican, I'll live in a Dominican house. And I couldn't figure out why they never responded. And the provincial put on official letterhead that I was coming there. Because since we're adults, it was up to me to find my own housing, but I wasn't making any success at it. So he got official and wrote it out on paper and on a Southern Dominican stationery, and no answer, no answer. And then when he got on the phone and pressed why I couldn't go, the prior just up front said he had saw a newsletter and saw my picture on it and said, I can't have a Black guy in our house. And he's a sophisticated social justice tooting Dominican friars. And the house I was gonna live in, they have a shrine to St. Martin de Porres. And I say they pimping Martin de Porres, and yet when I come there, they slam the door in my face. So I don't know any Dominicans other than the ones down here. Thank God for the sisters. I don't know other Dominican friars other than the ones in the southern province, because I would be nervous to go knock on their door. So that's my raw story. It hasn't been rosy, but I have centered myself with the gospel. And some of my role models since I was kids, and I won't get into naming names, was just a collective group of women called the Eucharist Missionaries of St. Dominic. When I was a student, brother, I had a summer experience. Part of our training was to have a summer experience. I lived in the convent, me and another guy. And they were the most authentic group of Christian women I ever met. When I took final vows, I told them that was the most beautiful thing about what I learned in my formation. They really were Eucharists. They taught in a real way, not in an intellectual way, what it means to be Eucharist. And that's why all the Black people just love them. My daddy used to say, boy, those women are good women, yeah. They in this little Cajun. It was just something about them. They all had different personalities. They weren't like school nuns. They did social work, stuff like that. They were nuns who, they didn't live a structured life. They lived a Dominican charism, but different from the teachers who I was used to. And so I use them as a model till this day, that I still have a responsibility to be a man of the word. Being a man of the word, such as the readings today, helps me not to be bitter, to fight racism with love, to be like Martin de Porres, who shamed his friars because he was extravagantly other-oriented. I'm sure he experienced pain, despite these cute little stories that he was so humble. And maybe he was, because he was entrenched in the type of spirituality, that self-defacing, I'm nobody, I'm a mulatto dog that we hear that he called himself. But part of that was he was socialized to speak that way, to deface himself, to devalue himself. But I'm sure like St. Francis and many great saints, towards the end of his life, he came to see how much God loved him. He came to see the words of Sirach, that he was a special, beautiful creature, and so was other people. And perhaps one of his biggest sins was he didn't know how beautiful he was. And if I may project that on him. And so that's my resolution for my lived situation, to struggle, to always be charitable. And I think I do a pretty good job at it. You know, I have my faults. I could admit some of them. I go into, I'm known to rejoice when a brother dies or not go to his funeral or whatever. Or but that's wrong. And I have to always challenge myself. Because and I'll conclude with one of my little childish things, how I think the Spirit of God in me, and being raised in an all Black Catholic environment, I used to sit in the back of the class, and in my math class, it was Sister Grillon. She was what we call a New Orleans Dominican, the school type ones. And she was a big fat lady. And I looked at her and I said, I saw her white skin and said, she's beautiful. And then I look at mine and say, me too. I'm the color of Popeye's fried chicken. I go to my childhood to see, it was in the innocence of childhood that I could see beauty. But of course, when I become an adult man, I get tainted with probably resentment that the world isn't like that. The world isn't my childhood perception of the world. And yet I still see the challenge of the gospel and the example of the sisters I was privileged to have. I'm the generation where there was a nun in every grade. So I had sisters all through. I never knew a lay teacher, not even in high school. So between the Eucharistic missionary and the St. Mary's, that's all I had was sisters. So that's why that's my reference point. And then I had my daddy holding my back, say, son, them women are real good women, telling us when we were little kids, when we'd see the Eucharistic missionaries in the streets in the neighborhood. And that was just part of the New Orleans environment. There were religious everywhere, streetcar, the grocery store, everywhere. You know, there were nuns, like my daddy would say, they're everywhere. And so I hope I help you. I'm very hopeful. I hope that the contemporary issue of racism is not just a trendy thing like the gun violence, like the mass killing. You know, when there's a notorious thing that happened next year, we get all excited. It gets a lot of media coverage. I hope that we on this chat that we continue to challenge ourselves, that we ask God to help us understand our dignity and beauty. Because me being close to people, white people who I've known who are racist, I find that what helps me forgive them, I find that their racism, like James Baldwin said, is rooted in them having deficits in their own self-love. They don't like themselves. They too come from broken families. And finding their dignity on the backs of other people and putting down Black people is their elan vital, is their sense of dignity. So as an older person, I pity them. You know, I pity them. And like a mystic, Julianne of Norwich, she says, God pities us in our brokenness. And so that helps me not to be resentful or be a combative person, a name-calling person, but just me continue to be challenged to be a lover, to love myself. And when I love myself, I can see that you're beautiful. You're beautiful and you're beautiful. Truly, not just in a sweet way, but Attractor is very beautiful. I just see her as beautiful. And Jana is just beautiful, sitting on the steps in Adrian talking. I thought it's beautiful. Marceline, when I met her in somewhere in Illinois, I saw her as beautiful. I really did. And so my association is not saccharine, but I'm with family. I'm with that community that we hear in Sirach. That's it.
Herman, that was unbelievable. Thank you so much. That was tremendously powerful. I'm sure our young people also have that same, I know it did for me. So I can imagine what they're feeling. Let me just ask, Jessica, how much time do we have?
We have about 5 minutes until our break, but if you want to take a few more, our break is going to be 25 minutes. So
okay, great, thank you. So if you don't mind, Herman, okay, I'm going to open this up to our young people anyone who has a burning question for Brother Herman, please unmute yourself and ask away.
I don't know if I could be characterized as a young person,
Oh,
but
go ahead, Virginia, you're good.
but I would still like to ask a question anyway. You used the term yesterday, hierarchy of dignity. Is that your term, or did you find that somewhere?
Oh no, that was my term. That was my term. That was my term.
That in the context of, we were in our group yesterday at Edgewood, we were talking about words that we use sometimes that people have a hard time processing if you use a particular term. So automatically, sometimes if you use the word racist or racism, that people automatically shut down. But when you use a term like hierarchy of dignity, I think that kind of opens up the discussion for people to really think about what that means and how people are treated. So that term is really brilliant, and thank you for developing that. And again, I think that your talk was really beautiful, and I'll contact you separately because I have a whole lot of other things to share, but I can't say it in 5 minutes.
Okay, all right, thank you, Virginia. Anybody else, any of our young people or our not so young people? Questions?
Mine's not really a question, but more of a comment. Brother Herman, that was amazing. It was very beautiful, and I love how you spoke from your experience too. And yeah, I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you.
We have a lot of very, very shy individuals who probably tonight in their home groups or their school groups will be asking tons of questions. So we have time for one more. Anyone?
I think I'm not a young person either, but if I can ask a question. Something I've really been thinking about, especially here at Caldwell, is images for our students, you know, that they can connect with, religious images, whatever it may be. And so I'm just curious for your own journey. Is there any other figures, I would say religious or not religious, besides St. Martin de Porres, that you really feel like you can connect with and find some solace in?
Well, right now there is a push to expand models of Black Catholics. For example, they're promoting 5 to become saints. I had the privilege of having one, if she becomes a saint. Sister Thea Bowman taught me a course in preaching. It's a new thing of us expanding our notion, just as we're trying to expand the gift of women, the other half. We're attempting to, I've always had other models of Black people, but they're trying to expose and change the narrative that it's not one narrow thing, that we're all in the shadows. And Martin de Porres is a statue found in a lot of churches. There are other models of holiness. Even the liberal book, Give Us This Day, they'll put Martin Luther King in here, Sojourner Truth. We're maturing and trying to expand, as they said in Sirach, all of creation, to try to be more inclusive of all of creation.
Thank you, Herman. Thank you. Thank you, Colleen, for the question. So again, we thank you profusely for your time spent with us. I personally think that you probably opened a lot of minds and a lot of hearts this morning. And so for that, I'm grateful. I'm very grateful. And what a great way to begin this day. with your presentation. So can I have those of us who are still on the call, a little round of applause for Brother Herman, okay? It took a lot of courage, okay? And I am profoundly grateful.